We have someone who is calling themselves Messages from the Universe, calling from the United States. Messages from the Universe, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
That is so awesome. I've been wanting to do this for a really, really long time.
That's great. I've been wanting to receive messages from the universe for a really long time, so it's good timing, I think.
Actually,
how's it going?
You don't even realize that you do.
I bet. Okay, so I have it from the call screen that you want to talk to us about who God is. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, to start that off, actually, I'm kind of sitting here with all my notes and everything. And, this is where I'm at. I've actually been talking to God universe for like several years. And I've just been wanting to like stay undercover because honestly, there was a point in time where I really didn't care if anybody else knew. And I know that's like a weird kind of thing, but recently the messages that I've been getting is that it is time for the world to know. It's time for the world to know who they are and who God is. And God is ready to move your needle.
Okay. Okay.
The thing that actually God wants to tell you, or everybody actually is God does speak in many ways to all. God does not, however, get to choose who listens. And that is very important. So the first
say that for me one more time. Say that for me one more time. I need to parse that.
There's going to be a lot of those. So
okay.
God does not speak in many ways, or God does speak in many ways to all. God does not, however, get to choose who listens.
Okay. All right.
So God talks to absolutely everybody.
Okay.
So the only problem is the reason that people don't understand or listen to God is because they make all kinds of excuses about how they can't be talking to God.
Okay.
One that I heard, because actually when I first started talking to God, I was super excited about it. And I wanted to go tell everybody. I was like, oh my gosh, you would not believe what's happening. I was having all these kinds of experiences.
Let's talk about this. Let me zone in on that real quick. Yeah. What's your process of talking to God? What does that look like?
I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So the first thing that you have to do is you have to allow yourself to know.
Allow myself to know. What does that mean?
And then secondly, I'm going to say this one too. You have to forget everything that you think you know about everything.
Okay.
Let's tackle that first one though.
Now I'll start with the first. Let's go back to the first one. You have to allow yourself to know. Meaning
to know what?
You have free will. You have free will. So, and you make the rules for your own life. So you make the decisions on what messages you get and which ones you want to listen to or which ones you don't want to listen to, because you already make a decision about what you believe. So you have to let go of everything that you think you know about everything. You have to let go of all the beliefs that you have, the belief about who you think God is. Because if you keep telling God who he is, he cannot tell you who he is.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Let's say I go through those two steps that you just outlined, and I've successfully completed that. When does the messages from God start appearing? Like what does that actual process look like? Is it a voice in your head that's talking to you? Is it seeing something and making a connection? Like, can you talk about that part for me?
Of course. The messages are constantly around you all the time, and you have to know that there's no such thing as coincidence.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff we have to know here, but do we know this is God?
I know.
Yeah.
And how do we know that?
I will tell you this, like I said in the beginning, I have literally been doing this for absolutely years, and I don't expect anybody, and God doesn't either, to expect everybody to get this all in one day. It's going to take years for everybody to actually understand this. And
can I ask you this? First of all, may I call you Messages? Because Messages is just the shorter form for Messages from the User. Is that okay? Okay, messages. So I've literally had people call into this show that do suffer from mental illness such as schizophrenia, and they've expressed to me that they get messages from things, or they get signs from things, and based on my observations, I think that is a result of their delusions. I don't think that's anything they can necessarily help. I think that's something that they're unfortunately born with, and it's incredibly tragic. But I do believe there are people that are receiving messages that they believe are outside of themselves, when really they are internal to themselves. And I'm not saying this is what you have or this is anything that has to deal with you. I'm just wondering, how can I tell that for myself, that I'm not receiving something from a God, or this isn't something that could be a delusion?
Okay, so someone called me schizophrenic before. And you know what? And I'm perfectly fine with that because I know exactly who I am.
Okay.
So, and that's
and again, there's nothing to be ashamed of if that's the case. And I don't know you. I can't diagnose you. I'm not saying if that's true or not for your own situation, right? But I need to know a demarcation, right? I think you and I, maybe you could agree with me that there are people that receive wrong messages, right? Because their brain is wired in a certain way, or they're making coincidences that aren't there, right? They're making judgments, right? So like, how can we tell truth from not truth in that? Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, well, we're getting way off, and this is kind of a little bit later, but see, there's no such thing as right and wrong.
Okay.
And I know that's like huge thing for people to kind of get and understand.
Right and wrong in terms of truth values, or in terms of like morality? I'm assuming you mean truth values.
I'm talking about everything. There's no such thing as right and wrong. And the reason why is and I can tell you how God showed me this. And I think that's what you're asking, is how are you getting these messages, which I will actually get to, because there's so many things. But okay, so right and wrong, actually, the reason why they don't exist is because first, everything exists and doesn't exist at exactly the same time. I'm going to say that again. Everything exists and doesn't exist at exactly the same time. Right and wrong don't actually exist, okay? But they have to exist in this dimension that we're in for us to make sense of this dimension that we're in. And for example, this is what God showed me, hold on, when the example of this is it's called like a dual dichotomy in this dimension that we're in, okay? And that's like man and woman, right and left, up and down, things like that is a dual dichotomy, and wrong and right is another one of those things.
Okay. I gotta let. I've been talking for a long time here. I want to let Michael join in, just because I don't want to be the only one talking with you on this. So go ahead, Michael.
You're doing a great job. Great job. I'm so confused. There's a lot of questions here. So first off, how do we know that this is the God of the universe? How do you know you're talking to God specifically?
Okay, so let me just start here. When I was around 9 years old is when I had my first calling. I felt like I was first time I ever went to a church. I felt like that literally there was this hand on me that pulled me up into the front of the church. That was my first experience that I felt like I had with God. Then in my 20s, that's when I started. This is where I was at. I really wanted to know who God was. And that's actually what it is too. I wanted to know, do you have all these religions out there? Every single one.
But how do you know it's specifically God? I think we're getting off a little bit here. So
okay, I'm getting there.
You've gotten all these messages. You said it was a hand pulling you and all these different things. But how do you know that was your specific God? There's lots of different gods out there. I mean, it could have been Spider-Man. You have no idea. So how do we know that it was your specific God?
I'm getting there. Okay. So I wanted to know who God was. I want to know which religion was the right religion. So in my 20s, I started to go into every single church except for the Catholic Church. I just felt like the Catholic Church was just not the church for me. So I went to Presbyterian, I went to like Christian, I went to like what I call holy roller churches. I went to all kinds of churches, and all along I kept asking God, like, who is right? Like,
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you messages, and I know you want to tell your story, but I think Michael's asking a very pointed question here, because it sounds like at this point in your story, you've already made the conclusion that this is a God, right? And you're just trying to figure out which one, or at least you've narrowed it down to a divinity of some kind. And we're trying to figure out, how did you get to that step? Like, how did we?
Yeah, that's a big step.
Okay, you guys want me to skip it all and go to the end? Okay. This is
Great. Yeah.
okay. All right. So let me think how to do this. Okay. So I'm going to explain. I'm going to just tell you how God showed me. Okay. Let's just start here because there's so much. And I know there's a lot, and there's so much.
Yeah. Try and condense it if you can. Yeah. Just give us the main points there.
Experience. And I'm just going to tell you, this is how God started showing me. When I literally start having direct conversations, pretty much I could ask any question I wanted to ask, and God would show me. How God would show me is He would have go through other people. He would have my answers would come through like a movie that I was watching. My answer would come through songs I was listening.
That's not God, though. Those are movies and those are people. Again, how do you know it's God?
Yeah.
God's not sending you a movie, is He? Those the people who made the movie sent you that movie, and the people who came to you for advice and whatnot. Those are just people.
Actually, it's you are the one that bring experiences to yourself. Yes.
Explain that.
That's actually how it works. But anyway, we're going to go back. Okay, let me just have a whole. Let me just let people hear this part without interruption because that'd be great. Okay.
Maybe we'll see. What you got?
Yeah, I can't promise you that we can't interrupt you because again, we do have a show to run. We've got a lot of callers that want to give their time to talk as well. So like, we really do appreciate just like, condensing things as much as possible and keeping things as concise as can be.
Try and stay focused on the questions.
Let me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to do. This is one of the things that God showed me about who we are. Oh, okay. We are all different forms of energy, and that's all we are. God, love, energy is the only thing that exists. That's it.
Okay.
I
We've kind of lost the plot here a little bit about what I wanted to ask your messages.
Say her piece.
I really and I understand you're excited. You want to be on the show. You've got notes, right? And you want to give out your messages. But the problem is, this is a show where we have a conversation, right? It's not just storytelling. It's asking questions to each other and stuff, right? Like I am legitimately interested in how you came to the conclusions that you've come to. But we can't, if we're asking that question, the response can't be, well, this is another conclusion that I've come to, right? We have to start things kind of one at a time. Otherwise, we're not really having a conversation. Does that make sense?
Well, if I actually came out and said that everybody is God, nobody's going to get that.
That's fair. But like, we have to know why, right? Let's start with just one thing at a time. And we'll get there, Like, let's start again with the divinity question. You say you're watching a movie and your belief is that God is sending you a message through that movie or is giving you something to get from that movie. Like, why God in particular? Why can't it just be a movie made by people, for example?
And you get something out of it.
After I had my spiritual awakening, I had a dream.
I don't know what that means either.
And after that dream happened, I started having literally direct conversation with God. I would ask a question, and how God would talk to me is He would talk to me. And actually, it's not just God. Like, I would talk to Jesus, and then I would talk to God, and then I would talk to another form of energy. It's all energy in different forms of the same thing. So let me tell you an experience I had with Jesus. This is how Jesus talked to me.
I'm sorry. We don't have time at this point. I'm really sorry. Like, we have to kind of keep a conversation flowing here. And
it's a conversation, not story time.
Okay, you had a dream. And because of that dream, you became awakened rather to God experiencing, God doing things in your life. Am I summarizing that fairly?
I wanted to know who God was, and I allowed myself to know because I didn't make any assumptions about who God was. And because I didn't do that, God was able to talk to me directly. Yes. I have every answer. I know why we're here. I know who we are, which we are God. We are God experiencing God. We are the creator's creation.
Here's a question I have for you. Am I going to be able to do that if I don't have a dream like you had? Because that sounds like something that's out of my control, right?
Like I said, God talks to everybody, but he doesn't get to choose who listens.
Well,
Okay.
he knows who's going to listen though, or what they're going to listen to. Correct? I mean,
I mean, I have a call-in show. I have not had God call in to talk to me at any point, right?
He's trying to. It's like the boats. You know, when you say,
Really?
"Hey, God, come help
He's
me,"
trying to.
and he brings the three.
Maybe he doesn't have the number.
Right? He's right. The number is messages from the universe, 1111. That's what the number is.
No, well,
And I'm,
I gotcha.
insane. I mean, God will talk to you to other people through other people. You guys understand that. You guys know that.
why can't God just talk to us
I think you guys get that.
in like directly?
I don't know.
It's a back and forth.
Oh, you were talking about, you were just saying before the show, though, is like, God is your friend. Why can't you just talk?
Yeah, is he there? Is he your best friend? Can we talk to him?
Oh, messages, are you there? Oh, I think we might have lost messages. That's okay. I was getting close to the end of that call anyway. When I hear, okay, so I can't evaluate people's mental health, right? I can't diagnose people just from a phone conversation. And so if that's an experience that somebody is having where it might bring up concerns about mental health, it does make a conversation kind of awkward, but I can't, I can't judge either way. I have to meet people where they're at. And even if it is somebody who has mental health struggles, that doesn't mean that they can't talk their truth or can't talk about their own life experiences. I think that's, they're still people and they still get to have a place at the table just like everybody else. But I will say, when I hear somebody talking about in the cadence and the way that they describe, it may have just been really excited, right, to talk about it, or it may have been something else. And that makes a conversation like that kind of hard, Michael. I don't know. I really don't have much other to say than that. Did you have any other thoughts on that conversation?
Sometimes it's really hard to pinpoint down to get them to answer that question. I have a friend who says like nailing Jell-O to a wall is talking to a Christian. So I mean, it's tough sometimes. I mean, I've had plenty of conversations and some go this way and some are great where, they will actually try and answer the question. And my favorite answer of all time that I hear from my guests is, I don't know. That's so honest. Like, thank you, because obviously you don't know the answer to this question because there's no good answer to some of these questions. So I mean, I don't know. I love the I don't knows. And then when they push back and they distract and you got to rail them back in, and let's stay focused. But yeah, it happens. There's just different people. Different strokes.
What concerns me, I think, is like, I hear this from Christians, right? Oh, God is telling you things, and maybe they tell a story about. I mean, the classic is like, look, I prayed for a free parking spot open and then it happens, right? Like that's kind of like the typical. But when it gets to the point where it's like, oh, it's everything in your life and you can dissect things from movies and you can dissect things from other things, like that gets to a point where it's kind of concerning to me because then it's almost obsessive in a way, right? Like I don't know. I'm not an expert on how to handle a situation like that, but I do know. I mean, I hopefully messages, if you're still listening, maybe you got to be heard today and maybe that was meaningful for you in some way. I hope so. Otherwise, next time I would encourage you to try to like help us with some of our questions because we can't answer questions with other conclusions about your whole life system, right? I mean, you got a complex thing going on here and we've only got about 10 minutes a pop or so each call. It really depends, but we got a show to run here, unfortunately.